Grace and peace, you guys. Welcome to the Standard of Truth podcast, where we discuss all things social, cultural, political, and theological from a biblical perspective. In honor of the donkeys of the day, none other than Charlamagne and Tezlyn Figaro of the Breakfast Club, I thought it would be most appropriate to wear my classic collector's tee, none other than the limited edition hashtag You Ain't Black Joe Biden t-shirt. Y'all, you would think that after getting spanked by Vivek Ramaswamy last month, that the Breakfast Club would pipe down on some of their aggression toward their political opposition. You would think that they would go back to the drawing board and do a little research on some real issues that are actually affecting their core audience and then actually attempt to ask questions of substance. But no, these ignorants never disappoint. All they know how to do is to be divisive and combative. They're condescending, and they're just a whole embarrassment to the Negro race by demonstrating that they really are not that smart, nor do they really care about the Black community. In my last video that actually got flagged for copyright, I talked about the combative nature and unprofessionalism of the female co-host, Tezlyn Figaro. Now, in this video, I am going to provide my commentary, but I will not attempt to share the actual Breakfast Club video footage because the Breakfast Club, they make sure that nobody else gets bread in their pocket but them. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to share tidbits of the audio, and then I'm going to provide my commentary that way. Now, the main point that I want to drive home in this video is that the aristocracy, they are working overtime to ensure that Black people stay ignorant, enraged, stuck, and perpetually grieved. Because if they can keep you in that mental state, at least 90% of the time, they can control you with the boogeyman known as the system so that you don't even try to rise above your circumstances. Because like Charlamagne said, no matter what we try to do, they always do something to hold us back, right? The goal is they want you to remain compliant, destructive, and demoralized. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with the term aristocracy, that is actually a term that I borrowed from Delano Squires that refers to the Black elite who represent 5 spheres of influence over the culture. Those are your preachers, your performers, your politicians, your pundits, and the professors. So this time, the Breakfast Club, they really showed out, y'all. They showed their entire behinds for the watching world to see. Recently, they had GOP presidential candidate Larry Elder on their show. And this is the second conservative that they've given a platform to, and they just keep embarrassing themselves. Now, this happens for a number of reasons. For one, conservative thought, conservative ideas, conservative policies, they are just better. No offense, I'm just saying. They're just better from a practical standpoint, an intellectual standpoint, an economic standpoint, and a moral standpoint. You simply cannot find a better worldview outside of a biblical one. Be clear, a conservative and a biblical worldview, they're not the same. However, there is a lot of overlap there. That's just a fact. You don't have to like it, but it is true. The ideas are better because they're better for the country. They foster a healthier community, and they just make sense because they work. Now, in an attempt to throw shade and make presidential candidate Larry Elder look bad, the opposite actually happened. Charlamagne, he asked a series of intellectually dishonest questions that he thought would make Larry Elder look bad, but the opposite happened.
Listen, you got to come see us when you come to New York, VP Biden.
I will.
It's a long way until November. We got more questions.
You got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
what happened, the statesman, Larry Elder, he took Charlamagne to the woodshed, like the old folks used to say. And he even used his own language to remind him that he's the one who missed his Negro wake-up call.
I know you probably got to go. Have you ever heard of the term nigga wake-up call?
No.
It is an incident where a person of color forgets that they are of color and are reminded rather brutally by an unexpected act of racism. Have you ever had any of those?
Oh, brother.
I'm just asking. You think you've ever had
Well, I'm acutely aware, Charlamagne, that I'm a black person, just as you are a black person. And when Joe Biden insulted you by saying, you ain't really black, we don't know whether or not you want to vote for me or vote for Donald Trump, it seems to me that should have been a wake-up call on your part. How dare this guy come in here and insult you, a black man, and tell you you got to think a certain kind of way? I'm amazed that you weren't mad about that.
I'm not gonna say it upset me, just like I'm not letting you upset me. You know what I mean? I don't tend to get upset over things like that. But what I did say,
well, you just not talk about a nigger wake-up call, and it seemed to me that should have been a wake-up call on your part to have a white guy come in here who also said, by the way, about Mitt Romney. Because he didn't want to put more regulations on Wall Street, going to put y'all back in chains. And Joe Biden has lied for decades about his civil rights record, claiming that he desegregated movie theaters and restaurants in Wilmington, Delaware, when he didn't do any of that. He lied and said that he tried to visit Nelson Mandela during apartheid South Africa. He did not. And he came in here and told you aren't even black and let you think a certain kind of way. It seemed to me that should have been a nigga wake-up call for you, but it wasn't, apparently.
Larry Elder's clapback. It was brilliant. It was brilliant. It was just a brilliant display of how you can take a person's argument and actually use it on them because it actually applies appropriately. But Charlamagne, because he's a member of the aristocracy, he has to try to act like, it's no big deal, despite the fact that he'll never be able to live this down. That man spends a considerable amount of time bemoaning and crying about racism every 5 minutes. He had no answer, though, when the president-elect Joe Biden belittled him, made him feel real small by reminding him that he was just a black man who doesn't have the right to entertain his own thoughts or to make his own decisions, but rather, boy, you gonna vote how I tell you to vote, because I'm the one who gives you your identity. I'm the one who tells you when to jump and how high. Don't you bite the hand that feeds you, boy. You understand me? And Charlamagne sat there like a good old boy, and he complied. So the first segment that I'm going to respond to in this video is how Charlamagne, whose needle is just perpetually stuck on stupid, he asked Larry Elder, so what do white people do that is so wrong? This is after Larry Elder has asked, he's answering the question, why are you in this race? And Larry Elder is spending some time giving him all of the things that are a concern to him, but that no one else seems interested in talking about. These people on this show, they are so filled with hatred in their heart on the basis of ethnicity that they can't even see how dumb they sound when Larry Elder is simply trying to highlight some key fundamental problems within the black community. But the pro-blackity blacks, right, they hate when you bring up facts because it continues to remind them of how their own choices have been an abject failure. And how the black people that they voted for, who represent them, have done nothing but gain power and prosper themselves at the expense of those that they have been elected to serve. They must constantly talk about, white people, because they actually believe, I believe this, they actually believe that they are inferior to white people. They have to constantly make mention of some white systematic power structure because it's easier to be a victim than to actually roll up your sleeves and address your own circumstances head on. They have to bring up the institution of slavery. They cannot let a conversation go on without talking about slavery, despite having never been a slave. And they must stay stuck in the past because if they don't, they won't have anyone one to blame but themselves. But accountability, or at least agreeing to the fact that yes, things are bad. Things in our community are bad. Yet most of the crime that's committed against us is done by us. That's just a fact. We didn't need crime statistics or crime data to validate that. Many of us, if you're living in Chicago, New York, Atlanta, LA, Baltimore, DC, Philly, Cleveland, St. Louis, Memphis, you already know this to be true. So stop playing. Like, no, we're not playing these games with you, right? These people, they will never agree with the truth because these people hate the truth. They dwell in perpetual darkness because they are of their father, the devil. That's one reason why Tezlyn, she stays in her Eveline, Wicked Witch of the West energy, like all the time. No matter when you talk to her, she's always coming with that same wickedness in her heart. She has no joy. And even when she tries to be nice, like you can see on sometimes she's just trying real hard to be nice. She can't even do it. Because what's in her, it flows right up out of her. It flows right up from here and right up out her mouth. She's dismissive, she's condescending, and she never misses an opportunity to throw shade or a low blow insult in the most arrogantly proud way, doing it while blatantly trying to argue the most ignorant of points.
Mr. Elder, a quick question. Let's just remove the word racism, since that seems to be a word that triggers, a conversation down the water hole. Let's just focus on the word system. Okay. You mentioned that the system was the one that discouraged. And again, we have no problem with agreeing that the family, the Black family, should certainly has some room for some improvement. But let's just focus on system.
Room for improvement?
System. Well, we're not going to go down that water. We're not going to go down that water hole. Let's get to the question. So the question is, you said that the system encouraged Black women to be single mothers, correct?
I said the welfare state, yes.
The welfare, the system. So who's in charge of the system? Who was in charge of the system?
Well, it was Democrats that passed it.
And who were Democrats? Were they Black or white at that time?
Well, at the time, majority of Black people were Democrats, as the majority of Black people are Democrats now.
Not the voters. I'm talking about the system. Remember, the main idea is the word system. Who was in charge of the system at the time? The Democrats at the time, the system. I'm just going to Charlamagne's point about white or Black. Was it white Democrats in charge of the system or Black Democrats in charge of the system?
Well, if you're prepared to say that Lyndon Johnson did this viciously with an intent to destroy the Black family, I disagree. He did it with the best of intentions. And if you look at the New York Times, which is left wing, the Washington Post, which is left wing, they cheered all of this.
Right. And what I'm asking was it white people. So I'm going to ask again in case my mic's not coming through clearly.
Now, she claims to be an independent, but no one can tell. No one believes you when you say that. You just do that so you can appear like you're not a puppet for the Democrat Party. But we all know better, right? We can tell, though, that she is racist. Now, that she is representing that well. We can clearly see that. She's also a Marxist, socialistic, Democrat operative. And I believe that BET has her on this show as the chief gatekeeper and shield of independent thought. How is it that you've worked for Bernie Sanders and not be a socialist? Like, you kind of have to be that in order to be Team Bernie. And that's another reason why I will never support leftist policies. So, for all of you who troll my comment section wondering why I always have smoke for the Democrats, it's because it's rooted their entire worldview from the party's inception up until today. It is rooted in bitterness, hatred, and covetousness, cloaked as ethnic pride. Actually, these people, they despise their own people, and that's why they work so hard to shield their audience from the truth. And that's why they support policies that inhibit Black image bearers from flourishing. That's why they push policies such as abortion. They push abortion real hard. They're against school choice, and they're also always calling for gun control. These are the very policies that prevent Black people from taking charge of their own futures, protecting themselves, guiding and controlling their own educational choices, and actually flourishing from the womb to the tomb. This is why people like Misha Maynor, representative here in Atlanta, this is why she jumped ship and left the Democrats, because it didn't take long for her to see that they're not interested in improving conditions in the inner city. They thrive when blacks are perpetually grieved and just mad at the system. But as long as they give them hope, they can keep power, keep selling hope, but maintain power and produce zero results. This entire interview, it demonstrates that the Breakfast Club and the urban audience that they represent, they take serious issue anytime accountability is brought to the forefront. Y'all, they can't even stomach it. They cannot handle it because we've been so conditioned to run in the victim Olympics that when freedom is chasing you down, i.e., conservative principles and ideas, you literally run from it and you keep running to your oppressor. Now, the other childish question that Charlamagne asked was, well, what do white people do? Implying that white people don't do anything wrong. Nowhere in anything that Larry Elder said implied that white people are somehow not culpable for breaking the law or committing crime. That argument was never on the table. But these people, they are such ethnic narcissists that an ethnic narcissist, let me just go ahead and define it. An ethnic narcissist is a person that has an unreasonably high sense of their own importance as it relates to their ethnicity, right?
Let me ask you a question. What do white people do wrong, Larry Elder?
What do you mean, what do white people do? I'm not worried about white people. I'm worried about what's going on with us.
But if there's systemic racism in this country, which we know it is.
No, I don't say there is. You say there is. I don't believe that.
Oh, you don't believe there's
No,
systemic
there
racism?
used to be, obviously. Tell me what you think the number one systemic example of systemic racism is in America.
Oh, man, there's so many.
Just give me the most important one you think.
At the top of mind, I'd probably maybe say mass incarceration. Maybe.
Really? During the Great Depression, when 50% of black adults were unemployed, you didn't have this kind of mass incarceration. It's the breakdown of the family.
So the very thing that they claim the white supremacist is, that's what they are. They need and seek too much attention on the basis of their ethnicity. And they want people to admire them and only tell them how wonderful they are, right? Like tell them how much they were kings and queens with a K. The ethnic narcissists, they lack the ability to understand or care about the feelings or concerns of others. And they have no problem being partial, ethnically partial, and just downright disrespectful to other ethnicities because they have hatred in their hearts. And their hatred is rooted on the basis of ethnicity. But here's the truth. Behind this mask of extreme confidence and all things and all love for all things pro-blackity black, they are actually not sure of their self-worth, and they are easily upset by the slightest criticism. That's why they can actually sit back and let Joe Biden assert an alternate identity on them and tell them, you ain't black if you don't vote for me.
So if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
And nobody questions it. Nobody questions it. They don't push back or try to expose it. They just sit and they take it. This is why they can't bear to hear the truth about what's really at the heart of the social ills in the black community, because it would force them to have to take a look and accept accountability, which is something that hurts too much. It's too painful. The ethnic narcissists, they will destroy themselves and go down with the ship because they're never wrong. And the problem, it is never them. It's just difficult for me. It's difficult for me to respect anyone who cannot see their own flaws. You can't change or make any sort of progress or growth in the right direction if you can't look at yourself and be like, you know what? Yeah, I'm jacked up. I got to do something different. We have to do something different. And it's amazing to me because I was talking to a fellow conservative the other day, dear sister friend of mine, love her to pieces. And she was explaining to me how many of us, us being Black folks, how we're just married to the subculture of failure. And it's all we know. So we also, she said, we struggle with prying away from the group, the collective. It's always we. We, for whatever reason, we believe that there's some sort of value and virtue in sticking with the group and not recognizing that we are Americans. It doesn't matter that what the group is doing is wrong or is not working. It's like the idea of thinking for yourself and unshackling your minds from the corrupt and morally bankrupt culture in favor of what is right and beneficial for you. It costs too much to do that. Now, the last aspect of this video that I want to address is how I am just sick and tired of Black women being used as attack dogs for the left.
No, sir. Stop. My apologies for interrupting you earlier. I just couldn't stomach the answer that I knew you were going to say.
Couldn't stomach the answer?
Yeah, I couldn't stomach, because your actual answer to Trump being what was happening to him with the indictments, you actually said that the system was doing it. You said there was a two-tier system. This is your words.
That's right.
It was a two-tier system. So when it came to Trump, all of a sudden you now believe in this systematic thing that's happening to Trump. But then when it happens to Black people,
but it's not about race. It's not about race. I didn't
ask you that. I asked you, remember I made it easy for you and I took race out of it. Remember I said I'm just talking about the system. I'm just talking about the system.
If you want to ask me whether I believe Donald Trump is being treated the same way as Joe Biden and is being treated the same way as Hillary Clinton, all of these people are white. All these people are white. There's a double standard.
Well, Mr. Elder, you didn't hear my question.
You said that
you didn't hear my question.
You said some people.
Do you ever notice how they will constantly use a combative, rude, and arrogant Black woman to do their dirty work? From Tezlyn Figaro to Joy Reid to Jamel Hill, these women, they're elevated in the media to be the distracting mouthpiece to train other Blacks on what the prevailing narrative should be and to make sure that they keep everyone else in line. They literally hire them to be the sheepdog, gatekeeper, attack pit bull. Charlamagne actually said it in this interview. He said directly to Larry, when the conversation was so combative that Larry couldn't get a word in edgewise. Is this why you don't like talking to Black women, Larry Elder?
90% rate of attrition, often making men and women walk on barefoot across the Sahara, and the men were castrated. Only about 5.
So if they go after the money from the other countries, then would you agree that it would be okay to go after the money from America? Is that your problem with it?
When are you going to stop with this? Everybody has a grievance.
I just asked a simple question.
I'm answering your question. There's no end. There'll be no end to this because slavery has been part of human history from the very beginning.
Okay, we're getting money. I've let you talk. Sir, I've let you talk. And every time I talk, you begin to talk and then you say, let you finish. So I asked you a very simple question. You said, if you're going to go after it in America, go after it in Africa. So if we all agree to go after it in Africa, will you then agree to go after it in America? It's just a simple question. Yes or no?
No, I won't, because it's a waste of time. We ought to be spending our time on education.
Next question.
Okay. You told me that I cut you off. Then I tried to answer your question. You won't let me finish.
Go ahead, Larry.
Thank you. It's a waste of time. We ought to be talking about working hard, investing in ourselves. Right now, as we speak, there are Haitians in Haiti lining up for a lottery to come into this country. Why? Because it is the land of the free and the home of the brave. You can go from nothing to something faster in America than any other country in all of human history. We ought to be talking about that.
Y'all, that exchange was insufferable. That woman is insufferable. Just running her mouth, digging herself deeper and deeper into the abyss of ignorance, and just winning the oppression trophy of the year. That woman went on and on and on about what system are Black people in charge of, when the truth is that no matter what answer you give someone like her, it will never be the right answer. Because one, none of us know the system, because they don't tell you. They won't tell us who's in charge of this system. Like, what is the main person at the top, or who are its main leaders? The question from the beginning has a faulty premise. Why? Because when there was an intricately webbed system of actual oppression, literally holding Black people back, we still we managed to make it and keep our families together with a solid moral foundation. We had a strong work ethic. No one could outwork us. We built our own colleges. We started our own businesses. We owned our own property. And we raised and educated our own children without the government's help. But now, people like Tezlyn, they just spend all their time begging the system that they claim they hate instead of spending that energy divesting from the system and figuring it out without the government's help. It makes absolutely no sense to me. Successful people, we don't worry about what other people are doing. We don't spend hardly any time thinking about that. Why? Because successful people are too busy focused on building and learning and growing. And I'm telling y'all, keep listening to these race baiting urban Afrostocracy gatekeepers if you want to. But please believe it. They are running and making big money from the system that they claim they hate so much. And they have no problems cashing and spending those checks given to them by the system that they claim they despise so much. Black people, newsflash, white people are not your enemy. There are dark forces of all stripes that are at work to keep this country divided. It's called the kingdom of darkness. And this woman, she is one of its chief apostles. She's an apologist for the Marxist socialistic destruction. And I pray that more people will uncover just how wicked she and the system she represents, the system, really is. Now, as I wrap up, I just want to say that I didn't vote for Joe Biden, okay? And so I just want to know, am I still Black or do I need to reapply? Like, I'm just trying to see something, because you see, these leftists think that they can bully you into silence. But honey, listen, I am not the one, okay? I ain't scared of none of y'all. And if your policies and ideas were so great, you wouldn't continue to get mollywopped on your own platforms every time. So Charlamagne, go ahead, bro, and take this L because you earned it. But I'm curious to know, what do you guys think? Did Larry Elder hold his own against the orangutan Tezlyn or not? Like, did he hold his own? Does she need to be locked up in a cage to keep others safe? I want to know what you think. Y'all take care. Ooh, child, this is too much. No, ma'am. Grace and peace, y'all.